On the afternoon of June 24, 1994, Spokane County residents watching the local news found out that a B-52 Stratofortress rehearsing maneuvers for an air show had crashed at Fairchild Air Force Base. While most other videos of the crash were immediately confiscated by the Air Force, one fell through the cracks, and the footage was aired while the bomber was still engulfed in flames. In the shocking images, the aircraft known as Czar 52 and Fairchild's last remaining B-52H can be seen making a steep banking turn at low altitude, then suddenly stalling and plummeting to the ground, exploding into a fireball. The following day, Air Force investigators arrived at the scene to find out the reason behind the crash that ended 4 people's lives, uncovering a long and unfortunate history of disobedience and negligence. Czar 52. America's first long-range swept-wing heavy bomber, the Boeing B-52 Stratofortress, was the replacement for World War II's iconic B-29 Superfortress. Primarily designed to carry nuclear weapons, the B-52, flown by the United States Air Force's Strategic Air Command, was the country's first choice of defense against surprise attacks during the Cold War, before the invention of intercontinental ballistic missiles. While the original B-52's blueprint carried a 6-man crew, the number of crew members varied during training and proficiency flights. The aircraft's final variant, the improved B-52H, was quite a sight to behold, with a 185-foot wingspan powered by 8 powerful Pratt & Whitney TF-33 turbofan jet engines. With the end of the Cold War, many of these final variant aircraft were housed in different Air Force bases, where they were kept and used for tests, and Fairchild Air Force Base was one of them. Built during World War II, the facility became an important Strategic Air Command base for B-52s in the Cold War, and by 1994, it was the nation's largest aerial refueling facility and home to the 92nd Air Refueling Wing. By June of that year, B-52 call name Czar 52 was the last of 7 Stratofortress that remained at Fairchild Air Force Base while awaiting a relocation flight to Minot Base in North Dakota. However, this aircraft was temporarily retained so flight crews could remain proficient in their specialties, and the other B-52s were relocated to other Strategic Air Command bases. Then, on June 24th, Czar 52 and a KC-135 Strato tanker took off from the airbase to practice a series of maneuvers for an upcoming air show. Soon, the partly sunny summer afternoon in the Spokane outskirts would become the darkest day in Fairchild Air Base history. Tragedy strikes Fairchild. Piloting the Czar 52 was Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Bud Holland, Chief of the 92nd Bomb Wing Standardization and Evaluation Branch, along with co-pilot Lieutenant Colonel Mark McGeehan. Rounding out the 4-person crew were radar navigator Lieutenant Colonel Ken Houston and safety observer Colonel Robert Wolfe. During the practice, the B-52 and the KC-135 slowly circled the airfield while flying in tandem and making flybys down the runway. Then, just 15 minutes after they had taken off, they started to prepare to execute the touch-and-go landing at the end of the practice profile, and the B-52 was instructed to go around, as the KC-135 was just landing on the runway. Maintaining an altitude of about 250 feet, Holland then radioed the control tower, requesting permission to execute a 360-degree left turn, with the tower controller subsequently granting the request. While approaching the runway's end, Holland climbed the aircraft steeply, and at an altitude of 250 feet, banked left into a tight 360-degree turn around the back of the air traffic control tower. The maneuver, however, proved to be too much for the aircraft, and the low altitude made any attempt to recover impossible. Czar 52 went past 90 degrees, blocking all airflow over the wings. At 2:16 p.m., the B-52 stalled and plummeted to the ground, exploding into a giant fireball, and narrowly missing a 3-story building filled with about 300 Air Force Survival School students, instructors, and staff members enjoying a farewell party. And while only 1 person on the ground was injured, the 4 crew members didn't survive. Immediate actions. The crash caused some damage to the base, as the bomber's tip of the left wing clipped power transmission lines, disrupting electrical service in the control tower and several civilian homes. In fact, the wreckage site could have caused a major atomic disaster, as the crash occurred only 50 feet away from the base's underground nuclear weapons storage area. Within minutes, rescue teams and emergency crews arrived at the crash site as a large cloud of toxic black smoke flared in the Washington skies. It took the management team nearly 3 hours to finally extinguish the massive flames, and the only remaining recognizable piece of the aircraft was the frame of the tail section, looming over the devastation, charred beyond distinction. Then, on June 25th, the U.S. Air Force convened a safety investigation board to determine why the 89-ton bomber had crashed. Because B-52s were not equipped with flight data recorders like commercial aircraft are, the investigation, under the direction of Air Force Chief of Safety Brigadier General Oren L. Ghodzi, focused on radio transmissions, the flight plan, the aircraft's upkeep records, and the crew's personal records. However, the board also had a crucial piece of evidence not usually available in most accidents: private video footage of the bomber's final run. Bud Holland. While most of the videotapes were confiscated by the security police, one escaped detection and ended up being aired on local television while the wreckage was still burning. Then, on September 28th, the Air Force Accident Investigations Board released the results of the investigation. Several factors were listed, including the sudden addition of the 360-degree maneuver, inadequate pre-flight involvement by Colonel Robert Wolfe, and the 10-knot winds at the time of the crash. Still, the accident was largely blamed on the pilot, who was practicing unauthorized and unsafe maneuvers for the B-52's size and weight. In fact, Bud Holland was not new to breaking the rules. Assigned to Fairchild Air Force Base in 1988, Lieutenant Colonel Holland quickly earned a reputation in the Strategic Air Command as a highly skilled yet dangerously aggressive pilot who often pushed aircraft to their limits. For 3 years, Holland had developed a pattern of blatant disobedience and insubordination, including often flying below minimum clearance altitudes, exceeding bank angle limitations and climb rates, and exploding in verbal tirades against his fellow crew members. Holland's antics went so far that many Fairchild officers refused to fly with him. On the day of the crash, Holland had ignored the safety rules once again. By flying too low, he caused Czar 52 to bank too steeply, resulting in the loss of 4 high-ranking officers, a multi-million-dollar aircraft, and infrastructure damage. But while the board determined that Holland was responsible for the crash, they also criticized the airbase's chain of command. According to the investigation, with more than 2 decades in the Air Force and over 5,000 hours of flying experience with B-52s, Holland's superiors repeatedly turned a blind eye to his infractions, letting him off with mere verbal reprimands and not taking the necessary measures to prevent a tragic incident in the future. Aftermath. On May 19, 1995, Colonel William Pellerin, the 92nd Bomb Wing's flight operations officer and Holland's direct superior, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of dereliction of duty for his actions, or lack thereof, that contributed to the tragic crash. The investigation presented at the Air Force court-martial proceeding stated that Pellerin never reprimanded the pilot over his antics. The colonel was sentenced to forfeit $1,500 of his monthly salary for a period of 5 months and also received a written reprimand. Several critics of the U.S. Air Force's safety record also remarked that the crash was an example of a series of problems related to rule enforcement within the organization. To this day, the Fairchild Air Force Base crash is used as an example of the importance of complying with safety regulations in both civilian and military flight training, as well as the significance of promptly correcting the behavior of anyone who violates those procedures. Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the like button. And for more history-inspired stories, please subscribe to this and all of our Dark Documentaries channels, where we publish new content every day. Stay tuned.